damaging the value or the appearance or the usability of their property. Things like landscaping that you can do, very non-Rambo type defensive measures.
What I also like about the information you teach is it's usable in a city, it's usable in a suburb, and it's usable in the country. You've got diagrams in your book. You show fields of fire, fields of being able to monitor other people. You talk about having an area, understanding what area you need to protect, like your garden area, to be able to harvest food, or your livestock, things like that. Can you talk about the wide range of applicability of what you teach?
Well, we obviously no two homes are the same, and it is, I think a lot of people do an excellent job of preparing. They have their seeds, their food sources, their water sources, various things like that. Defense tends to be lower on people's list. I always tell the people that I teach and mention a lot in the books, the biggest shortcoming or the biggest problem I see with most preparations is that folks are not ready for ultimate violence. They are not ready for what desperate people, hungry people who have no fear of punishment would be capable of doing. And you don't have to go there. You can study it. You can read about it. History is full of examples of this. Even some of them are going on currently. Somalia, for example, we talk about quite a bit. Bosnia, Serbia, even now in the Middle East, there are certain areas of Egypt that I think communities or small groups of homes have banded together to protect themselves. And if hunger is involved, if there is a grid-down situation and the food supply becomes critical, people will get desperate.
Well, that's something that you really speak about, and I talked to you about this in person. Let me ask you another thing about that. But first, let's crank up the phone system, and I want to invite some callers to call in the next segment to ask you some questions, Joe, if you're okay with taking some questions from some callers, because I know people really have a lot of they're highly motivated to get information in this realm. But let's talk about the typical. You talked about how violent things could get or how quickly they could break down. Two questions for you. One, how thin really is the veneer of politeness in society today, where people, call 911 and wait for the cops to show up? How fragile is that system really, in your opinion?
Well, probably in the United States, the most recent example that I have studied quite in depth is New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. And while the initial news stories coming out of the Superdome were greatly exaggerated, it is a fact even today that a large percentage of the New Orleans Police Department either couldn't or didn't show up to work. And in a natural disaster situation like that, most people, I think, realize deep down inside that help will be coming, that eventually the police department, the National Guard, even federal troops will eventually be there to establish order. And my experience with hurricanes along the Texas coast has been people initially band together. I refer to this period as a social grace period. If the event is known to be national, if the event is very widespread, that period of social grace is not going to last very long.
What, like 3 or 4 days, maybe?
It would depend, I think, on the size of the community, but it's not weeks. Okay. I do not believe at all that it would be more than a week or two at most.
All right, what happens after the social graces and the societal politeness goes away? What do you start to see then?
Well, then you start seeing the breakdown of the small community groups that would have formed. There would be challenges for leadership. There would be vacuums in the rules. Those that are well prepared and have a large food supply might be pressured to share more than what they're comfortable with. I'm a big believer in charity. I'm a big believer in helping out my fellow man, but I also have to allow for my family's survival and protect that. And so then you would start to see, I refer to it as bickering. There you would also get the average American family, according to several different statistics. I believe the latest are from FEMA, has about 3 to 5 days worth of food.
Wow, that's it?
That's it. At 10 days, people are going to be very hungry. In a grid-down situation, your local grocery store is not going to get its truck.
All right, Joe, we got to go to break here. Sorry to cut you off, but we're going to continue with you on the other side of this break. You're listening to The Alex Jones Show, an interview with Joe Nobody. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this break with a lot more. You are tuned in to The Alex Jones Show, even though I'm not Alex, obviously. This is Mike Adams, the Health Ranger, filling in for Alex today. And we're joined by a guest, Joe Nobody. He's the author of this book, Holding Your Ground, which is a way to strategically look at your own house, your own ranch, your own property, even in a city, and keep yourself safe against anything that might happen. And I think to continue with you, Joe, a lot of people underestimate just what might happen, and I'd like to kind of put you on the spot here with a little game, if you don't mind. This wasn't prearranged or anything. So I apologize if I'm putting you on the spot, but how about I give you a scenario of a prepper, and you tell me if you were a bad guy, how you would beat it?
I'm good with that as long as I don't need a robotic fly swatter.
Yeah. You heard the insect swarm of drones segment that we did in the last hour, huh?
Wow. I just say wow. I leave it at that.
Yeah, they're going to mass produce these things by the billions probably. And by the way, we will be taking calls for Joe Nobody. We've got callers on the line, Candace, Michelle, Dave, Daryl, and more. So we'll get to those calls shortly. But let me give you a scenario. A typical prepper, let's say, they've got their stash in their house, maybe some gold coins, maybe some food, maybe some ammo. And you got, grandpa's rocking in a rocking chair on the front porch with a shotgun, and he thinks that he's safe. How would you defeat that scenario, Joe?
Well, first of all, again, underestimating distance is a big mistake. In that particular scenario, not that I ever would personally attack an occupied residence.
No, you're speaking. I want to be clear. You are going to describe what a bad guy would do to defeat that for the purpose of educating us to be safer.
Thank you for clarifying that. Anyway, the occupants of the home would never see me. I would be 300, 600, 900 yards away. There is absolutely no reason, if society has collapsed, for me to take a risk of personal injury. I'm probably very mobile. I don't even need a huge rifle to be effective at that distance, and the occupants would just literally never know I was there until it was too late. Even if they stayed inside of the home, as we stress in the books, walls do not stop bullets, and bullets cause fires. And so I'm going to use a distance-based attack. Probably if I have a team of desperados, if you will, I'm going to keep everybody's head down with distance-based fire. I'm going to envelop the home. We're not just going to walk up to the door and kick it in and go into a fatal funnel.
Right.
We are going to come in from more than one side. And in the meantime, somebody that you can't even see is keeping your head down.
Now, you say bullets start fires. Are you talking about incendiary rounds in particular that you would be, that a bad guy would be carrying to try to burn?
No, not at all. Regular lead bullets start fires. Curtains burn very easily. I tell the story in the book that I used to live, when I was a child, I used to live next to an open landfill. Back in those days, I'm probably aging myself there quite a bit, and it was a big Saturday morning activity to go down to the local dump, we called it, and target shoot. And you would not believe the things that I've set on fire just with normal rounds out of a normal rifle.
Well, that sounds like a really fun childhood.
Well, we had a good time.
Wow.
But out in the country, that was pretty good entertainment. And ammo was cheap back then. So, yes, curtains burn very easily. I've even caught on fire vacuum cleaners, robotic toys we use as targets sometimes in our classes. It's really not hard to set common household items on fire from bullets.
So you do use these robots, huh? So you know what we're talking about. What do you have, little Terminators out there that you shoot for training?
I go to Radio Shack and get a remote control toy and drill a hole in the side and put a coat hanger in it, blow up some balloons, and boy, they make a great training target.
Wow.
You get somebody a little crafty on the remote control zigging and zagging it around, and it's a good training aid.
Okay, wow. A lot more great information coming here from Joe Nobody, folks. We got to go to a break shortly, but we're going to come. This was a short segment. We'll be back after this break with more. And, Joe, I've got more scenarios for you. I'm going to give you some challenges, and you tell us how the bad guys would defeat someone who thinks they're defended, who thinks they're prepared, who thinks they're safe. And, again, this is for educational purposes only to help law-abiding citizens stay safe in uncertain times. Stay with us here on The Alex Jones Show. This is Mike Adams, the Health Ranger. We'll be right back. Speaking with Joe Nobody today, he's the author of numerous books on tactical self-defense, but not just with bullets and firearms, but things that you can do to even, for example, you can make your house look like it's already been looted and burned out so that people pass it on by in the case of a society collapse. Even if it's a short-term collapse, you know, a few weeks is all a few days is all it takes for someone to loot your home and harm your family. So we're all about safety. We want InfoWars listeners to be safe, to be well-informed, to be well-prepared. And that's why we've got Joe Nobody on as a guest today. Joe, we were talking about some scenarios. Are you ready for another one?
Absolutely. Hit me.
All right. So the context here, again, for the listeners, is I'm going to give Joe a scenario of a typical prepper, and he's going to think like a bad guy and tell us how he would defeat that scenario and, you know, take you out and take your stuff. So let's say you have, this is in a suburban area, a suburb. So you've got a family that refuses to come out of their house. You know they've got food. You know they've got medical supplies. You know they've got water filters and gold, let's say. They refuse to come out, but you, the bad guy, you want to get them out and you want to get their stuff. How would you do it?
Option one, burn them out. At least smoke them out. Option two, take a vehicle and just drive it through the front door. That is ultimate violence. It's a technique that our troops started using in Iraq on very heavily steel-gated, steel-door, adobe homes. They would drive a Humvee or a Stryker up, and they would just push on the door with the front bumper. In a post-collapse situation, I'm not worried about my car insurance. I probably have picked up the car down the street anyway. It's probably not even mine. And they won't come out. The area is too open for us to try to cross to try to get them out any other way. Drive a car through the front door.
See, this is why I like talking to you, Joe, because you're creative in a kind of a wicked kind of way. But the reason this is important is because most Americans are polite people. Most Americans are good people. They tend to follow the rules. They tend to think, I'm not going to bash in my neighbor's front door. I'm not going to, you know, snipe and kill some innocent person. And you know, thank God.
What desperate people, hungry people who have no fear of punishment would be capable of doing. And you don't have to go there. You can study it. You can read about it. History is full of examples of this. Even some of them are going on currently. Somalia, for example, we talk about quite a bit. Bosnia, Serbia, even now in the Middle East, there are certain areas of
other people. You talk about having an area, understanding what area you need to protect, like your garden area to be able to harvest food or your livestock, things like that. Can you talk about the wide range of applicability of what you teach?
Well, we obviously no two homes are the same, and it is, I think a lot of people do an excellent job of preparing. They damaging the value or the appearance or the usability of their property. things like landscaping that you can do, very non-Rambo type defensive measures.
What I also like about the information you teach is it's usable in a city, it's usable in a suburb, and it's usable in the country. You've got diagrams in your book. You show fields of fire, fields of being able to monitor.
Have their seeds, their food sources, their water sources, various things like that. Defense tends to be lower on people's list. I always tell the people that I teach and mention a lot in the books, the biggest shortcoming or the biggest problem I see with most preparations is that folks are not ready for ultimate violence. They are not ready for Egypt that I think communities or small groups of homes have banded together to protect themselves. And if hunger is involved, if there is a grid-down situation and the food supply becomes critical, people will get desperate.
Well, that's something that you really speak about, and I talked to you about this in person. Let me ask you another thing about that. But first, let's crank up the phone system, and I want to invite some calls.